Whether you or your students are planning on playing in an orchestra, a jazz band, a rock band, certainly a marching band, paradiddles are a fundamental rudiment that you should learn for technical and musical development. Now, they're introduced fairly early on in the school percussion program, albeit with quarter notes, so the students are playing them fairly slowly. Usually when you read them, they're 16th notes or 8th notes. But to learn them properly and to think about the couple of points I'm going to make today will help your students with all aspects of percussion playing. Now, a paradiddle is an evenly spaced 4-note pattern. You start with one hand playing an accent, a second stroke on the opposite hand, and a third and fourth stroke with the original hand. So it's just like that, and it goes from hand to hand. Now today we're going to talk about two elements of the paradiddle. The first is that playing that first accent well, and the second is those two strokes at the end. Those are called the diddles, which are, you approach them very much like you would approach playing double strokes in an open roll. Now, any technique we discuss today is being discussed for the purpose of playing as efficiently and as tension-free as possible. And before I go any further, I'm going to be talking about a technique called lifts and levels. And I have another video on that. If you click on the link below, you should have a look at that, and then you'll have a better understanding of what I'm going to present later on. Now, lifts and levels, though, is a great way to teach your students control of accents and of dynamics in general. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to play that accented first note. Now, your students have to understand that what we're training our hands to do is not for, we're not training the muscles to have brute strength. We're training our muscles to be able to control, redirect, and sometimes tame the energy that is created when you drop that stick onto the drum. Now, when you drop the stick onto the drum, no matter what height you drop it from, whether it's from up here at about 12 inches or down here at about 2 inches, it's going to bounce back. You drop it from a higher level and it's going to bounce back with more energy. And that's what our muscles have to learn how to control. Now, often students stiffen up. They think playing faster, they'll stiffen up. Playing louder, they'll stiffen up and beat down into the drum. But what happens is if they're pushing down into the drum and the stick hits the drum and it explodes, there's that explosion of energy and it comes back, but the hand isn't prepared to come back with it because it's too stiff, they're going to lose control. Now, if it's relaxed, you'll be able to manage that energy better. And this is where the lifts and levels come in. So we're going to talk about two levels above the snare drum. 2 inches, roughly, and 12 inches, again, roughly. But when your students are practicing them, if you're with them, I would create two lines, basically, 12 inches and 2 inches. And those are the guidelines for which they should drop or lift the stick. Now, with a right-hand paradiddle, this is how we're going to work it. Okay, so we start our right hand at about the 12-inch level, and the left hand at the 2-inch level. And we're going to drop that first stroke from 12 to 2. Then we're going to lift that second stroke from 2 to 12. And then we're going to have two final strokes, 2 to 2 and 2 to 2. And now you're set up for that next accent with the left hand, because we switch hands. And we'll do it again. So 12 to 2, 2 to 12, 2 to 2, 2 to 2. Now what your students have to focus on is dropping, not pushing or hammering the stick into the drum, just letting it fall. They should think about a release of weight. So the weight of the stick, the weight of the hand, the weight of the forearm, it just falls into the drum. Now actually I tell them to think beyond the drum. I tell them to think of dropping it onto the floor, and the drum happens to be in the way. But if they drop it onto the floor and keep the hand at the 2 position, the stick is just going to pop back. And if they shouldn't tighten up. If they tighten up, it'll shake. They'll lose control. But if they just drop it with a totally relaxed arm and hand, and the stick will hit, and just let it pop back to the 2 position, and they're set to go. And there's no tension in the hand, and they'll be able to play comfortably at quieter levels after that. So I'll just quickly review a couple of basics. You want the weight of the stick in the front of the hand, with the fingers underneath the stick holding it loosely. Now give the stick a little room for movement. You're holding a stick as tightly as you have to so that it doesn't fall out of your hand. Some people say like you're holding a little bird and you're being very gentle with it. Okay, so there's no squeezing involved. So with these fingers, and support much of it from the middle finger and the 4th finger also helping along the way, I have it from 12 to 2. And that's it. Thinking of the weight, there's a curve. Feel the weight of the stick pulling down. Just pulling down from the wrist. And the 2 to 2, you just want to make sure they don't lift up before they play a 2 to 2. It should be just a drop from the 2 back to the 2. Now they have to practice this slowly at first. They should practice each paradiddle very, very deliberately. So each note, after each note they should check where their stick ended up. They won't want to do this. Students don't like doing that. They want to play fast. They should practice with a metronome. And so if they set the metronome at a very slow tempo, and you tell them that's how they should practice at that with those clicks of the metronome, that'll kind of keep them in check for a while. Now, then we get to the next part of it, which is the diddles. And then what we start thinking about is, okay, diddles, it gets faster, we bounce it. But a bounce isn't like you throw it in and the second stroke just happens on its own. Certainly not at this tempo we're playing it at, which isn't that fast. So we want to control that second stroke. It's not throwing it in and getting that kind of second bounce, because there's no control there. And if you're playing at a slower tempo, it's going to be, the rhythm's going to be totally off. It's a drop and then a secondary turn of the wrist at a lower level. So it's like this. Instead of this. And that second stroke, if they're listening carefully, should be at the same volume as that first stroke. And even though it's at a lower level, you're getting that energy coming up, and redirecting it will give them the power and the intensity that's equal to the first stroke of that diddle. Now, we've talked about what they should watch for as far as the levels are concerned. You also want to make sure that they're listening to what they're doing. And I think a lot of people, don't emphasize this enough. So they want to hear those 2 accents sounding exactly the same, no matter which hand they're starting from. And of course, the unaccented notes sounding the same. Now we'll put it all together, and I'm going to demonstrate the paradiddle at 2 different tempos. We're going to start very slowly at 46, and we're going to play the paradiddle at quarter notes at that speed for your beginning students. Focus on the levels, 12 and 2. 12 to 2, 2 to 12, 2 to 2, 2 to 2. Down, up, tap, tap. Focusing on that relaxed shoulder, arm and hand, the weight, dropping it through the drum to the floor, and listening carefully for the even dynamics. Okay, Okay, then I'm going to speed up a lot, but your students have to speed up incrementally. I'm going to go up to 120 because that's a marching tempo. And I'll play the 16th notes at that tempo. If your students can do this, that's great. It's not the fastest they'll ever want to play it, but it's a really good tempo for them to have as a goal. Still trying to keep it light and buoyant. I'm lifting up off the head, not thinking of hammering into the head. Now they should practice dropping at different levels. So I've got 12 to 2, you can think of 12 to 6 or 6 to 2, etc., to get control at the different levels. Now I'll encourage you to check out my paradiddle practice video, where I'm going to post a link below, and you can send that link to your students so that they can join me in real time practicing paradiddles. Now this video, I hope, will keep them engaged and focused as I guide them and provide a clear model for practicing paradiddles. And band teachers will want to check out the other link below. That's to my Band Teacher's Percussion Guide. That's available in stores and all your favorite online booksellers, where you can read more about all aspects of teaching and playing percussion.